Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode. This is your host, David Kim. Hi, Gerry. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. Chicoa is the area of Cahora, which is, it was actually called Nova Chicoa. So it's the name of the area where the farm is.
Mozambique.
In Mozambique, yes.
And I googled the tilapia. Actually, the Asian people enjoy the fish and seafood. So many. I mean, we eat a lot of variety of fishes and seafood. But I'm not really familiar with the tilapia. I heard about a lot. I mean, U.S. and other part of the world that they farm the tilapia. Well, to me, it looks like it's similar to the snapper in shape, right? Does it taste good?
Uh, because it's essentially a farmed fish, it does depend quite a lot on the environment. So if you farm it in a very good quality, clean water, the taste is very good. Yes, tilapia it's a very good fish for farming because it grows very well. It's disease resistant, and it doesn't mind being kept in cages. It's a shoaling animal, so it's very suitable for fish farming. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at your profile. I found that you moved to Uganda in 1995, which is 25 years ago. Wow, so long. You live and work in Africa so long time, right? Working as engineer at a tea company. So would you
Yeah.
like to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, or how you ended up living and working in Africa? Please tell us about your journey to fish farming and learning Chicoa in Africa.
Yeah. In fact, I've now spent more years living in Africa than I have in my native country of Ireland. So grew up in Ireland. I studied in Scotland to do engineering, and after a year, I took an opportunity to do some volunteer work, which was to help the Commonwealth Development Corporation when they were doing the rehabilitations of the tea plantations in Uganda. So I joined there as an engineer to build the factories, and I spent 3 years in Uganda. And then I was ready to go back to Ireland to go back to sort of mainstream engineering there. And CDC said, we have this fish farm down in Zimbabwe called Lake Harvest. Would you not be interested to go and build the fish processing plant there? It'll only be a 1-year contract, and then you can go to Ireland after that. So I said, okay, fine, no problem. Let me go to Zimbabwe. So I came to Zimbabwe. I built the factory. I really enjoyed my time. I met a lady here who became my future wife, so that encouraged me to stay a little bit longer. And then in 2001, CDC was disinvesting from quite a lot of primary industries in Africa, and we did a management buyout. So myself and 4 others did a management buyout of the fish farm, Lake Harvest in Kariba. And we stayed farming through the whole of the financial crisis that was Zimbabwe in the early 2000s, where we had, I forget what it was now, 4 billion% inflation or something ridiculous like that. And then when we came out of that period and we dollarized, we were really undercapitalized, and we took in some new shareholders. And after a while, myself and Damien, who were working in Lake Harvest, decided that we would try some pastures new. So we left Lake Harvest and we started a new farm in Mozambique, and that was in 2015 when we started there, and we've been trying to grow Chicoa Fish Farm in Mozambique ever since.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose the thing is, when you're here, we looked at, for example, Mozambique, and there's nobody farming fish there, and it's quite a difficult place to get started.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we hadn't have started fish farming there in 2015, somebody would have come along eventually, but it's not like there was people queuing up to really get going there, because it's so difficult. So you do take a lot of strain for that, but there is a lot of satisfaction in that. If we hadn't have done it, I don't think, certainly by now, there still wouldn't be fish farming happening on the scale that there is.
Yeah.
So you do feel that it's you get quite a lot of satisfaction from that.
Yes, I can feel that. I can feel that. You are the
Mm.
part of the history, right? Fishy farming, aquaculture in Africa. Hey, yeah, that's
It
really
sounds quite grand when you say it like that, but
yeah.
yes, we're trying to make a difference for sure.
Okay. The why Mozambique? Not like there. I have seen that some country around the big lake like Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi. But why did you choose Mozambique?
You see, I think for us, see, we've been farming for a long time on Lake Kariba, all from '97, myself and Damien, and it's part of the Zambezi Valley system. So Lake Kahorabasa, where we looked to farm in Mozambique, is only a couple of 100 kilometers down the river. So the environment is quite familiar for us. We know the conditions, the water conditions. But also because Mozambique has had like a relatively recently, it's had quite a difficult history with instability. It meant that it was very underdeveloped, which is, if you want, in terms of biological security, there was a massive lake there that nobody was using at all. There was a people who like fish and who had, who really in the country really recognized that it needed to start doing more food production because they were relying on importation to feed themselves. So you had a market, you had a perfect environment, and it was, in many ways, it was familiar for us. So we thought, well, let's give it a go.
Yeah, gotcha. In Asia, emerging market like Southeast Asia, I traveled a lot for business, and then I have observed that I have seen a lot of large scale and financially successful fish farming aquaculture business everywhere. So one of the customer I work with in Vietnam is they are it is the largest global number one shrimp I mean the exporter. Their annual sales is almost $1 billion, and net profit is 70, 80 million US dollar. So I imagine that probably fish farming is a good potential and future for the emerging market or frontier market. But surprisingly, I haven't seen many large fish farm of commercial scale in Africa. What are the biggest challenge in barrier aquaculture in Africa? Is it water or capital, electricity, skilled workers, logistic, or all of them?
Well, water, the environment, it's probably, it's very well suited. There's some really fantastic water resources in sub-Saharan Africa which are underutilized. And particularly, I think, West Africa, I'm not so familiar with, but East Africa and Southern Africa, I mean, the populations are relatively low, globally. So you have these water bodies, and often these water bodies are in areas that are not highly populated, and so they're really, really good quality water. So that's a plus. I think probably the difficulties are that normally you would get an industry growing to satisfy its domestic market, and then it would grow and grow and then look to export markets, maybe regionally, and then export markets globally. Whereas, for here, because we have had such good, relatively low populations and good water resources, there has been wild capture fish available, over the years, and there hasn't been a really good domestic demand because obviously wild capture fish are going to be, if it's plentiful and easy to catch, are going to be cheaper than aquaculture fish. So there hasn't been the domestic opportunity until quite recently. And so I think the domestic demand needs to be there, and we need to start to get some economy of scale in that. And it's the economy of scale generally. And then you can then build these businesses to look into the regional markets and then eventually to the global export markets. But you probably need that higher price domestic market to really kickstart the industry so that you can start to build some real economies. I mean, if you look at us, we're vertically integrated, but that's just, that's not normal. We as one business can't be experts in manufacturing of feed, breeding of fish, growing of fish, the distribution of fish, the cold storage and the retail, that should be, you should be at a scale where that's broken up and you have real specialists in each of those areas.
Yeah. In your website, I saw that the Chicoa is a vertically integrated solution to kickstart the freshwater aquaculture industry. So, are you running the all the farm by yourself, or also you're working with the smallholder farmers, small scale farmers, to support them and then work together?
Yeah, we are essentially doing all the farming ourselves at the minute, but we have a program where we are training up some small scale farmers. Um, One of the things one of the attractive things about Mozambique is that it does bring international donor money into the country, looking at food security for particularly people in the lower environmental bandwidth, so people who are poorer, trying to improve their food security. So there's a lot of programs there, and we want to really feed into that. So small scale fish farming is something which can really improve food security through the country, but you need the inputs available in country. So somebody has to be able to do the feed and the fingerlings and the training and the equipment and stuff.
Yeah.
So we see that, we need a vertically integrated farm in order to be sustainable, from A to Z at this stage. But if we can develop a market for fingerlings and feed in these small scale farmers, then it helps the country in its food security, but also it's good business for us as well.
Yes, yes, I think so. You can scale the business much faster with that business model, right? Some the fishy farming or the fish processing companies in Southeast Asia, usually they are large company. They have a combination, like 50% of the fish they grow by themselves, and remaining 50% they source from other small scale farmer, and then they distribute domestically or the export. Yeah, that
It,
I'm
it, makes,
familiar with.
it makes a lot of sense because one of the biggest risks in fish farming is your biological risk.
Yeah.
So if you're sitting with all of your fish in one big farm, the potential to have a catastrophic event where you have a terrible disease or something running through is really high. So
Yes.
so if you have many production sites, you have your main production sites and many multiple others, then that spreads that risk around as well.
Yes, like a finance, like good portfolio of risk management, right? Yeah.
Similar,
Yeah,
yes,
yes,
similar.
yes. Yeah. Okay. And so are you selling the fish uh in by export, or are you distributing the fish in domestically as well?
We're doing some close regional exports. So we have a couple of cities nearby that are in the region. So we have Blantyre and we have Lusaka, which are nearby, and we're selling into those. That's in Malawi and Zambia. But at the minute, we're still only doing fresh fish on ice. So we're pulling the fish out of the water and we are putting it on ice, and we are just taking it straight to the market, and it's being sold immediately. So that's pretty tough and pretty intense. We have a processing facility which we are currently constructing so that we can do a little bit of processing and freezing and packing of the fish. It's been a little bit delayed because of the coronavirus problems and moving people around. We can't get the technicians into the country to get the construction finished. So at the minute we're doing all fresh fish on ice, but the majority is being sold in Mozambique, but we are doing a little bit in these neighboring countries. We hope when we can freeze and pack our fish that we can expand into South Africa and Zimbabwe as well.
So mostly you are distributing within Africa.
We are distributing mostly in Mozambique and then to our neighboring countries
I
only.
see.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Last time when we had a call, you talk about like a protein supply deficit in Africa, right? And then you mentioned that the chicken and fish can be good solution in terms of cost productivity. Can you please tell me about that more?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look onto the FAO and those types of websites, you know, they will talk about that you have a growing, the fastest growing population region in the world is going to be Africa. So there's going to be large population growth here, and you know there is no clear vision on how to feed that future population. So they talk about this protein deficit going forward. And I think when you look at how people are going to feed themselves in the future, there's a big push now to say that, you know, we talk about the sustainability of beef and these other animals, so that they take so many hectares of, you know, rainforests cut down in Brazil to produce so many kilos of beef. So there's an efficiency problem there. So when you look at the livestock efficiencies, you know, typically beef would be an FC, a food conversion ratio of 7, so you'll get 7 kilos of food for 1 kilo of animal. Pork is about 4, chicken's about 1.7, and fish we're currently getting 1.3. So we only need 1.3 kilos of feed to produce a kilo of fish. It's a much higher protein feed than beef, for example.
Right.
But nonetheless, you know, the amount of crops that you need to produce a kilo of fish is efficient. So it's a more sustainable and more economic. It's cheaper to produce fish than it is to produce any of these other livestock animals, because they convert so well.
Yeah.
And because they convert so well, equally they have less impact on the environment because they excrete less. And so, and most of the crops that you need to grow fish can be grown really locally. So it's mostly maize and soya, which can be grown within a couple of 100 kilometers of our lake. So it's a really good, sustainable solution going forward. And I think that's kind of where Africa needs to be looking at these white proteins, which are very efficient converters of vegetable protein to animal protein.
Yeah, it sounds like chicken and fish is much more competitive than the beef and pork, right? 7 times difference. That's
Well,
huge.
yeah, it's huge. It's not a direct comparison because, you know, beef will eat a lot of fodder, which is very low protein, and it's just grasses and other things. But yes, essentially, fish and chicken are much more efficient. Chicken's easier because you can replicate the environment. You can have a chicken house anywhere in the
Right,
world, and you can
right,
recreate the same environment. Fish is
right.
a bit more
Yeah,
complicated.
that is true too. That's why that
Mm.
sometimes I'm surprised. I was surprised to find the price of chicken, large economy. So I'm from South Korea, so I can compare the price of chicken in the Korea, which is very, very cheap because their production system is very well structured and then very like a intensive concentrated system. Something the structure looks like apartment, right? They don't need a lot of land. But so when I've traveled like emerging frontier market, so some places the price of chicken is much higher than Korea. So I was surprised because that's a free range chicken, right? Also, kind of chicken is growing very, very slow, some kind of chicken, right? That's why it costs more money. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, I think the poultry industry is quite similar in a way to the aquaculture industry, but it's much more developed.
Yes.
So you'll find that, you know, the vast majority, I forget the numbers, but the vast majority of the poultry of chickens particularly produced globally come from a very few number of genetic lines because they're very highly specialized and they grow
Right.
very fast. So there's no genetic diversity.
Yes.
Um, you will find that you cannot quite do the same in fish because you need to be careful about bringing in different genetic strains, and you can't control the environment as easily for the same cost. You can create an indoor system, but then there's an additional cost of building and operating that. Where Africa has an advantage is that it's got all these beautiful water bodies that have very good heat units that you don't need to construct much. You can just put cages in the water and fish grow. But then you do the flip side of that is you have to be careful and not bring in genetics left, right, and center. You have to try and use fish which are suitable for that environment, because you will get some escapees, of course. So there are parallels. We're both soy and maize based. We're both genetics. We're both livestock. We're both growing at quite good FCRs, both white protein.
But how big is your business now in terms of positioning of Chicoa in Africa, in terms of production and sales?
Yeah, so we're last year we did just under 1,000 tons of fish. So that puts us up sort of, there are a handful of farms that are bigger than us. There's probably more there'll be a few in Ghana and Nigeria for certain. There's a few farms on Lake Victoria which are bigger than us. There's 3 farms in Zambia, but I'd say we're up at 1,000 tons. That starts to produce us into some of the significant players in Africa. And I would say that there has been since we established the business, there's been quite a significant downward pressure on the price of fish because of production coming out, because of different issues. One of the major markets was Zambia, which is their economy is quite dependent on copper, and copper prices went down. And the government restructured the taxation system on the extraction industry, so that dampened the money supply in Zambia. So and at the same time there was increased production from these other farms on Lake Kariba, so that put a downward pressure on prices in Zambia. But I think there's a long-term need to establish, tilapia as really a commodity rather than, being individual sales. Eventually, we want it to be so big that it just becomes a commodity, and that will give us a bit more price stability going forward.
I see. Other than tilapia, because as I mentioned in Asia or the Greater China is other like grouper, other fish like grouper is more popular, and we eat consumes a lot of different fishes and seafood. But in other than tilapia, are there any other fishes African consumer eat? I mean, that also has a good potential in terms of fish farming in the long run.
Um, in West Africa, catfish is quite popular, particularly in Nigeria, I understand. And I understand in North Africa, carp does quite well also. But in Southern Africa, tilapia is really preferred over catfish. There is
I
a
see.
cultural issue. Some people are, and culturally they don't like eating catfish because it's a fish with whiskers and no scales, so it kind of doesn't categorize well in their culture. So there's a lot of people in this part of the world who would prefer tilapia over catfish.
Yeah.
But I suppose these things change over time, of course.
Yeah, first thing is a consumer need to be educated or experience a variety of fishes first, and then business can grow together, right? That's the usually situation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose for us, we're even at an earlier stage where we're just trying to get a foothold on the industry. So you'd rather just start with the product that the consumer is familiar with and is happy with. I think as businesses grow, as aquaculture starts to develop, you will find if you have successful tilapia farmers, they will start and they start competing. You'll see some of them try to diversify into other species, but we're not quite at that stage yet.
Yeah. How about the shrimp? Because shrimp is a very big thing in Asia. A lot of large shrimp processing company or a lot of small scale farmer who grow the shrimp or the crab, even crab. Crab is very popular in Asia as well. Yeah.
Yeah, at the moment, I understand crab is essentially just wild capture. I don't know of any farms in the region. There are some big shrimp farms, but they are all focused on the. In fact, they export to Europe, who process it and on export it to Asia. So most of the I think most of the prawns grown in the big farms here
Right.
eventually end up in Asia, as far as I understand. They're
Okay.
they're really a very niche market in terms of consumption here. They're
I understand you raise the money from the outside investor, still continue to finance from the outside investor to finance your operation and growth. So, assuming that you have an outside investor who want to make a big bet on your venture, support the expansion and growth, what are the area expansion you want to focus on with the new investment, large scale new investment?
Yeah, so I mean, we're currently closing around now. The hope is that this round is going to take us into profitability. That we'll just scale the business that we have, and that will take us into a cash positive position, and that kind of opens the door for new opportunities and looking for sort of more mainstream investors. Up to now, we have been rather dependent on impact investors, people who are looking to invest in some things which are significantly higher risk but have higher impact. Going forward, we need to scale our business, so we need to go from our. We'll hopefully close this year at around 2,000 tons. We want to take the business up to 5, 6, 7, 8,000 tons, somewhere there. We want to really develop the small scale farmers, so we need some investment in that. We're looking at upstream. We're looking at doing a feed plant on site, so we want to start manufacturing our own feed, and we're going to look at some innovative new feeds. We're going to look at doing semi-moist feeding. We're going to look at seeing if we can essentially do a vegetarian feed for tilapia, so that we don't rely on animal or fish byproducts. Downstream, we're looking at really diversifying our distribution, because we're distributing single products at the minute. We're just doing tilapia, which is kind of inefficient. We really want to look at developing the perishable distribution business, and if we can make that work, that has the potential to be a standalone business and break away from us. And then we'll also sort of develop our retail networks as well, just to see if we can really see what we can do there. If we can develop from tilapia shops to maybe doing seafood shops, see if we can maybe look at perishable, so lots of upstream and downstream development opportunities.
Gotcha. Uh, so last question from me is, what do you have on top of your mind for the next step and your long-term vision in Africa?
I would say, well, our focus is really to get this business profitable, because that really puts us on a firm footing going forward. The vision going forward is really looking at scale. How do we take a single farming vertically integrated business and turn it into an industry? How do we get real scale? Because we're still slightly specialized. We're still we're still quite high overheads at the minute. We want to take this to a place where you've got groups of farms or groups of production areas in different countries producing a really good quality, affordable protein going forward, so that that's and where tilapia becomes ubiquitous, and people are in sub-Saharan Africa, tilapia becomes a very, very common meal that people are eating very regularly, and that will give us an economy of scale to produce a really super efficient, super affordable protein. That's the long-term vision. So it's transforming a company into that is going to be quite a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm convinced that fish farming has a very good long-term potential and future in Africa, and together with the chicken farming, poultry farming. Yeah,
I agree. I think so.
yeah.
But I'm glad you share the vision. It gives me a little bit of confidence. Thank you,
Okay.
David.
Yeah, because I'm the finance guy. I don't know all the detail of operation, but my angle is I look at the different market in Asia, and then I have observed how they develop, grow, last a 30 year. Based on my personal experience, fish farming should be, future for Africa, I guess. Yeah. But you're just struggling to solve all the problems, so many issues on the ground. So after that, you are going to have a bright future, I guess. Yeah.
I think, I mean, it's like all of these things, these sort of, pioneering things, there's a timing for them. So you can be too early
Yes. Yes.
and you can start too early and you can run into too many hurdles and run up too much debt and take too long to reach profitability and you collapse. But I think, it really feels like, because it's not only us that's doing fish farming, there's other people doing fish farming as well in the region. So it feels like this is really ripe now. This is really the time to look to scale up. So
Yeah.
we are keeping our fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
Yes. Thank you so much for taking time to share your interesting business journey.
David, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and yeah, let's stay in touch.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, share with a friend, and drop me a review. Goodbye.